The saloon doors breathed like a pair of lungs. Wood inhaled. Wood exhaled. In that hush before the piano found its tune, before the whiskey found a throat, Jesse Calder set his palm against the scarred plank and felt the whole town of Gray Butte steady itself on the other side. He had learned late in life that a door wasn't just an entry, it was a measure. On one side stood the man you hoped you were, on the other waited the man you couldn't help but be. He pushed through. Light slashed him glass, amber, dust motes, stirring as if afraid to touch him. Conversations broke on the rocks of his silence. Someone coughed, someone lied about not looking, and somewhere a fly tapped the rim of an empty shot glass like a nervous drummer. Jesse didn't need to scan the room had already scanned him. The chandelier, drooping like a tired spider, cast 12 fragile stars across the tables. Cards rustled, boots scraped. The piano man took his hands off the keys, as if music might cause trouble to bloom bigger than it intended. Behind the bar, a mirror told a kinder story than the truth. It returned a man younger by a year, cleaner by a lifetime. "Evening, stranger," said Gus the barkeep too brightly. That was the thing about Gus. He greeted men the way a preacher blesses storms with hope that they'll pass. Jesse set his hat on the counter like a verdict and ordered water. It earned him a grin from 3 cowhands and a squint from a prospector who believed hydration was a moral failing. He let them grin, let them squint. He'd learned that in the desert every man worshipped what saved him first. Then she sang. Clara Wynn's voice wasn't loud, wasn't fancy. It drifted like smoke from a campfire that someone had banked carefully to last the night. Her song told of dry creeks and promises tied to wagon axles, of letters that never found the men they were written for. She stepped down from the tiny stage with a smile that said she'd seen more towns than a map could hold, and fewer smiles than a heart required. She wore black silk with a blue ribbon like a river stitched across midnight. Her eyes landed on Jesse the way a hawk lands, choosing a fence post that can carry the weight. "You're late," Clara said, as if they had an appointment. Jesse tasted the desert on his tongue. "Didn't know I was expected. Everyone is, when the doors open." She nodded at his empty glass. "You chasing thirst or running from it?" He didn't answer. The mirror offered his face again, the crease at the mouth that came from years of not smiling, the pale line along his jaw where a boy in Abilene had nicked him with a broken bottle. He had traded names like coins across the frontier, but some debts stayed the same. From the corner, a laugh peeled loose. Velvet, lazy, amused. Silas Drennan was playing solitaire with a partner's confidence, a man who always held the right card because he dealt the deck. He wore a bone-colored coat, clean as a hymn, and a scar that dragged the edge of his eyebrow just enough to make him seem curious about pain rather than acquainted with it. "Calder," Silas called softly, like a friend inviting another to admire the sunset. "Thought you swore off towns that remember." "Gray Butte remembers." Jesse didn't turn. "Towns remember until they forget. And men?" Silas asked. "Men remember until they forgive. Men remember until someone makes them stop," Jesse said. Deputy Hank Mercer leaned against the far post with a red sash at his hip, where decent lawmen wore patience. His star caught a shard of lamplight, flashing every time the chandelier trembled. Hank's gaze stuck to Clara, like burrs on wool. He chewed a matchstick, bit down when she moved. Sheriff Tobias Crane was not in the room. His absence sat heavy. A missing tooth you worried with your tongue. Folks said he'd been riding the North Ridge, looking for cattle thieves that never seemed to exist when Hank wore the badge alone. Father Miguel Aranda drifted near the doorway, quiet as absolution. He nodded at Jesse with the small smile of a man who'd prayed for him once and hadn't decided whether the prayer took. Clara traded the piano bench for the bar rail beside Jesse. "You carry a quiet the size of Nevada," she said. "I been told it shows." "It does. Men like you bring weather to a room." She tipped her chin toward Silas. "He's thunder. You're the heat you can't see." Then lower. "You looking to settle something that started elsewhere?" "Elsewhere's got long legs," Jesse said. It keeps pace. The doors breathed again. Ethan Crane slipped in, dust in his hair, worry tucked under his arm like a folded blanket. He was a boy scouting for the man he might be and not liking the trail. He walked straight to Hank Mercer. "Pa ain't back," Ethan said. His horse came home without him. The piano found a single chord, then thought better of it. Silas looked up from his cards, amusement changing color. Clara's hand found the edge of the bar and held tight. Gus polished a glass that was already clean. Hank Mercer's smile was the kind men practiced in mirrors. "Sheriff's a big boy," he said. "Sometimes a saddle needs air. Not like this," Ethan said. His voice cracked, then chose solid ground. "I found blood on the cinch." Clara's breath caught. Father Miguel crossed himself. The mirror presented Jesse with a man he'd been too many times, the one who heard trouble and measured how far it would travel. Silas Drennan stood, slow as a sunrise you couldn't rush. "Well now," he murmured. "If Sheriff Crane took a wrong turn, Gray Butte will need someone who knows how to draw straight lines." His gaze slid to Jesse. There it was, the thing the room had been leaning toward since the doors sighed open. Not a fight, an appointment. "Don't," Clara whispered to Jesse, the word barely sound. "Don't let him write your evening." Jesse had promised himself outside, hand on the wood, that he'd be a man who drank water and passed through. He felt that promise stand up and walk away without saying goodbye. "Boy," he said to Ethan, not taking his eyes off Silas, "where'd you find the horse?" "Dry creek wash." Jesse's fingers read the weight of the holster like braille. Dust drifted between him and Silas, motes counting seconds. He set 2 coins on the bar. They rang like small bells. Hank Mercer eased off the post, palm ghosting near his own iron. "Now, Calder," he drawled, "we've got a law about drawing when a deputy's present." "You got a law about finding your sheriff?" Jesse asked. Hank's matchstick cracked. Silas's smile widened just enough to break trust with the rest of his face. "Doors opened, Calder. Seems you got no choice but to draw." The chandelier trembled. Clara's song lived a moment longer in the rafters, then fled. The saloon watched the space between 2 men shrink to the length of a trigger thought. Jesse lifted his hand, and in that sliver of silence before decision became sound, the saloon doors exhaled once more, and someone staggered through, leaving a black smear along the wood, a hat tumbling to the floor like a promise he couldn't keep. The man who stumbled through the doors collapsed before the piano had time to gasp. He fell heavy, dragging the air down with him. A black trail glistened behind him, streaking across the saloon's threshold like an unrolled verdict. His hat spun once, twice, then lay brim up, catching dust like a shallow grave. Jesse Calder's hand froze above his holster. He didn't need to draw, not yet. The stranger's chest barely lifted, his shirt soaked in a red map that pointed nowhere good. Clara Wynn knelt first, silk pooling around her knees, blue ribbon trembling against her shoulder. She pressed her hand to the man's wound, though her eyes already knew it was like trying to hold back the desert wind. "Sheriff Crane," she whispered. The name cracked through the room harder than any gunshot. Ethan Crane staggered forward, face pale, eyes wild. "Pa?" His voice pitched upward, boy to child in a heartbeat. He dropped beside Clara, clutching at his father's arm, as if touch could rewind time. Sheriff Tobias Crane's lips twitched, words scraping through dust-dry breath. "Dry creek, ambush, not cattle, men." His head sagged. Silas Drennan leaned against the card table, one brow lifting like a curtain over a bad play. "Well now," he said slowly, "that explains the horse coming home alone." His tone was soft amusement, but his eyes glittered sharp. Deputy Hank Mercer moved in, tugging the boy away with rough efficiency. "Give him space." He knelt beside the sheriff, but his hands hovered, uncertain, unwilling to soil themselves with real duty. "What men, Sheriff? You see faces." Tobias coughed, blood painting the corner of his mouth. Didn't matter. They were waiting. His gaze flicked to Jesse, steady even as life leaked out. "You, Calder, don't let this town—" His voice broke into a rasp. Unfinished. The saloon stood in a hush so brittle it could snap under a breath. Father Miguel Aranda stepped forward, drawing the sign of the cross above the sheriff. "Rest, brother. The trail's behind you now." Ethan's cry split the silence, raw and jagged. He clung to his father's still frame, tears carving tracks in the dust on his face. Clara wrapped an arm around the boy, though her own shoulders shook. Hank Mercer rose slow, scanning the room. "Hear that? Ambush at Dry Creek." His mouth twisted. "We'll need a posse." Silas smiled, half-moon sharp. "A posse led by who, deputy?" "Your sheriff just cashed in his last sunrise." His glance shifted to Jesse. "Maybe Gray Butte needs steadier hands." The crowd murmured, fear and suspicion rippling like prairie grass before a storm. Jesse felt the weight of eyes, pressing, asking, demanding. He had ridden into towns like this before. They all wanted the same thing, a man to blame, a man to follow, sometimes both in the same breath. Clara's gaze cut to Jesse. "Don't let him take it," she whispered fiercely, chin tilting toward Silas. "He'll bleed this town dry." Jesse's jaw tightened. He hadn't come to Gray Butte for crusades. He'd come to drink water, pass through, maybe find a quiet night. But the sheriff's last look lay on him like a brand. Hank Mercer spat his matchstick into the dirt. "We ride at dawn. Any man worth his salt will join." His tone was command, but his eyes flickered, uncertain, as though measuring his own courage against the task. "Or," Silas purred, stepping forward, "we ride tonight, while the trail's still warm." He tapped the butt of his pistol, letting the metal glint in lamplight. "Men who wait lose." Ethan's voice shook, but it carried. "My pa named Calder. I heard him." He wiped his face with a trembling hand. "He trusted you." The boy's words struck harder than Silas's smirk, harder than Hank's bluster. The saloon seemed to lean closer, waiting for Jesse Calder to claim or refuse the burden hanging in the smoke. Outside, a wind rose, scattering grit against the windows like fingers clawing to get in. Jesse lifted the sheriff's fallen hat, brushing dust from the brim. He set it on the bar beside his own, the gesture simple but heavy as iron. "I'll see what's waiting at Dry Creek." His voice was steady, though his gut knew he was stepping into chains that wouldn't break easy. Silas's smile turned cold. "Then I reckon I'll ride too. Wouldn't want you keeping all the glory." The saloon doors shuddered in the wind, as if remembering how they'd opened, how they'd forced his hand. And in that moment, Jesse Calder knew the choice was no longer his. The desert night stretched thin, stitched with stars that flickered like dying campfires. Hooves drummed against the hardpan, carrying Jesse Calder, Deputy Hank Mercer, Silas Drennan, and a handful of townsmen out toward Dry Creek. Behind them, Father Miguel's blessing lingered in the air, though Jesse wasn't sure blessings held against ambushes and snakes in human skin. Ethan Crane rode close to Jesse, his father's rifle clutched tight across his lap. The boy's eyes burned like twin lanterns, too young for vengeance, too old for innocence. Clara Wynn had begged him not to ride, but he'd slipped from her arms anyway, muttering that no one would tell him how his father fell. Dry Creek lay ahead, a scar across the land. Moonlight pooled in the wash, silver on sand, painting the rocks like teeth in a half-buried jaw. The sheriff's horse had returned from this place. The truth, Jesse knew, hadn't. "Spread out," Hank Mercer ordered, voice tight. He carried authority like a borrowed coat, too big for his shoulders, sleeves dragging in the dust. His hand hovered over his revolver as if he expected ghosts to draw iron. Silas Drennan laughed low. "Careful, deputy. You look like a man afraid of shadows. Shadows don't leave blood on a cinch." Hank shot back, though his gaze flickered. Jesse reined in at the edge of the wash, boots crunching gravel. The place was too quiet, the kind of quiet that rode shotgun with danger. He dismounted, crouching low, fingers tracing the ground. Blood, dark, dried, a trail leading deeper between the rocks. He raised 2 fingers. The men followed, weapons drawn, nerves strung taut. Ethan's breath caught loud, echoing against stone. Jesse pressed a hand to the boy's shoulder, steadying him without words. Then came the whistle, sharp, piercing, not from their ranks. The canyon erupted. Figures rose from the rocks like vipers from sand rifles flashing, revolvers barking. Bullets screamed against stone. Horses reared, men cursed. The night turned fire and thunder. Jesse rolled into cover, his revolver spitting flame. Beside him, Ethan huddled close, clutching his father's rifle, eyes wide. "Stay down!" Jesse barked, though the boy's trembling hands already found the trigger. Silas Drennan, grinning through the chaos, fired with surgical calm, cutting one outlaw from his perch. "Now this," he shouted over the storm. "This is the kind of night worth remembering." Hank Mercer ducked behind a boulder, shouting orders drowned by gunfire. His red sash flickered in moonlight like a wounded banner. Jesse's eyes caught movement above a shadowed figure standing bold on the ridge. He raised his revolver, but then the figure called out, voice rolling like thunder. "Gray Butte rides with traitors tonight." The words cracked through the canyon, louder than the guns. Ethan's head snapped up. That voice, I know it. A shot rang. Close, too close. Stone exploded beside them, showering dust. Jesse pulled Ethan down, heart hammering. The boy's voice trembled but pressed on. "That was one of Pa's men." Jesse froze. The canyon swirled with gunfire, but the truth struck colder than lead. If Ethan was right, then the ambush wasn't just outlaws. It was born from inside Gray Butte, and the boy's eyes weren't on Silas or Hank. They were fixed on someone closer. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the Wild West. Gunfire chewed the canyon walls, every shot a hammer blow against the night. Dust rose in choking clouds, swallowing the stars. Jesse Calder pressed Ethan Crane flat against the rocks, shielding him from the ricochets that spat sparks across the wash. "Keep your head down, boy," Jesse barked, his own revolver bucking with steady rhythm. But Ethan's gaze wasn't on the outlaws above. It was locked on one figure among their own riders, Deputy Hank Mercer. The red sash flashed as Hank fired into the shadows. But something was wrong. His shots weren't aimed true. They struck high, wide warning fire, not killing fire. Ethan's voice cracked with fury. "It's him! Jesse, it's him!" Jesse risked a glance. Hank ducked behind a boulder, lips curling around a grin too sharp for a man under siege. He glanced upward toward the ridge, and for a breath, Jesse swore he saw a signal, the brief lift of Hank's hand, a motion meant for eyes in the dark. Betrayal sat heavy in Jesse's gut. Sheriff Crane had bled out, naming the ambush. Now his deputy's shadow grew long against the moon. A shot tore the ground near Jesse's knee, snapping him back. Silas Drennan rolled into cover beside him, teeth bared in a grin that looked more like hunger. "You see it too, don't you?" he shouted over the chaos. "Our good deputy's playing both sides." "Shut your mouth and fight," Jesse growled, but Silas only laughed. "Fight who, Calder? Them up there, or him down here?" He jerked his chin toward Hank, who was rallying the townsmen with a voice full of false command. Another outlaw fell from the ridge, screaming, blood arcing through moonlight. Jesse kept firing, forcing the enemy back. Still, the words gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the memory of Tobias Crane's broken plea, "Don't let this town." Ethan clutched his rifle, knuckles white. "He let my pa die. Not now," Jesse snapped. "We survive first." But the boy's eyes were molten, his finger trembling near the trigger. Above them, the outlaw leader's voice roared again, echoing through the canyon. "Gray Butte belongs to us now. Lay down your guns and live." Hank Mercer's voice answered, too quick, too loud. "Hold fire. Maybe we can talk terms." Silas spat in the dust. "Terms? That snake's already signed the ledger." Jesse grabbed Ethan's shoulder hard, pulling the boy close. "Listen to me. You shoot him now, you'll never outrun it. Let me handle this." But before Ethan could answer, a fresh volley rained down. One townsman screamed and toppled from his horse, vanishing in the dark. Clara Wynn's voice rang faint from the ridge above the saloon, carried on the wind like a prayer. Jesse. She must have followed their trail. Against every warning, the cry yanked Jesse's heart two ways at once, toward the woman risking everything for him, and toward the boy about to throw his life away for vengeance. And in the canyon's chaos, Hank Mercer turned, eyes meeting Jesse's. For the briefest instant, the deputy's smirk said everything Jesse feared. "This town's mine now." Jesse raised his revolver, but Ethan lifted his rifle first. The canyon thundered with lead, but to Jesse Calder the world slowed to the scrape of Ethan Crane's rifle lifting toward Deputy Hank Mercer. The boy's eyes burned hotter than the muzzle flash about to follow. Jesse lunged, shoving the barrel skyward just as Ethan squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked, harmless into the stars. "Not like this," Jesse roared, voice raw. Ethan twisted, fury spilling like floodwater. "He killed my pa, then we prove it, boy," Jesse snapped, dragging him behind cover. "One bullet in the dark won't give you justice, only a grave." Across the wash, Hank Mercer barked orders, his red sash bright as blood in moonlight. To the townsman, he was the desperate deputy holding the line. To Jesse, he was the rattler coiled at their feet. Silas Drennan crouched low beside them, revolver smoking. "You're wasting breath, Calder." The kid sees clear. Mercer's rot. Let him take his shot. His grin widened, hungry for chaos. "Hell, I'll back him." Jesse's jaw tightened. He'd seen too many boys turned killers, too many men like Silas fanning the flames. "You'll do nothing but fight your side," Jesse growled. Before Silas could retort, the outlaw leader's whistle cut through the air again. A second wave poured from the ridge, shadows leaping from stone, rifles flaring. The canyon lit like a storm of angry gods. "Fall back!" Hank shouted, though Jesse noticed his men were retreating toward the east gap, right into the outlaw's funnel. Jesse cursed under his breath. The ambush wasn't chaos, it was a trap, tight as a noose. He grabbed Ethan's arm. "Stay close, we cut west." Through the dry gulch. Ethan hesitated, eyes darting between Hank and the ridge. "But..." "No buts," Jesse snapped. "You want to honor your pa. Live long enough to do it right." They sprinted low, Silas at their heels, bullets chasing their shadows. Dust stung Jesse's throat, the air thick with powder. A horse screamed somewhere in the dark. They slid into the gulch, rocks shielding them from the worst of the fire. The world narrowed to gasps and gunmetal. For a moment, silence returned uneasy, waiting. Clara Wynn's voice carried again, faint but desperate, echoing down the canyon. "Jesse!" Jesse's chest tightened. She had followed them after all. Her cry wasn't just fear, it was warning. Above, a figure loomed on the ridge, lantern raised high. Its glow washed over the canyon, signaling. The outlaw's gunfire shifted, converging. Silas swore, eyes gleaming. "They're hunting you, Calder." Ethan's voice cracked. "Why? Why you?" Jesse stared at the lantern, at the shadow holding it high. The face was too far to see, but the betrayal was plain. Someone in Gray Butte had sold him out, not just Mercer, maybe more. The boy's question hung heavy, but Jesse had no answer yet. Only the weight of an old truth pressing down. Men didn't outrun their past. The lantern swung twice, then dropped. A new silence swallowed the canyon. Even the gunfire thinned. Jesse knew that kind of silence, the kind that meant something worse was coming. The ground beneath them trembled. And from the north ridge, a wagon rumbled into view, iron-bound and bristling with rifles, not carrying supplies, but more men. Too many men. The trap wasn't just to kill, it was to wipe Gray Butte clean. The wagon rattled down the north ridge like a coffin on wheels, lanterns swaying, rifles jutting from its sides. The outlaws weren't satisfied with scattering men, they meant to grind Gray Butte into dust. Jesse Calder shoved Ethan Crane flat against the gulch wall. "Stay down!" His revolver barked twice, sparks leaping from iron, but the wagon rolled on, bristling with firepower. Silas Drennan whistled low, crouched behind a jagged stone. "Now that's a fine piece of work. Whoever planned this wasn't just aiming for a sheriff, they're claiming the whole damn town." His grin held no fear, only thrill. Ethan's voice shook. "We can't fight that. We'll all die here." "Not if we move smart," Jesse said, scanning the shadows. His eyes found a narrow cleft splitting the gulch wall, half hidden by scrub. A way out. Dangerous, but it was all they had. "Hank!" Jesse shouted over the roar. "Pull your men west, into the rocks." Deputy Hank Mercer's reply came quick, too quick. "Hold your ground. We push east." His voice cracked like a whip, herding the townsmen straight into the outlaw's teeth. Jesse's stomach turned cold. Mercer wasn't even pretending anymore. He was driving them to slaughter. Ethan caught Jesse's arm, eyes blazing. "You see it too. He's leading them wrong on purpose." Before Jesse could answer, Clara Wynn's scream ripped down from the ridge. She was there, caught in the lantern light, struggling as two outlaws dragged her toward the wagon. Her silk dress tore in the dirt, her ribbon flashing like a wounded bird's wing. Jesse's chest locked. The sight twisted every thought, every plan. Silas saw it too and chuckled darkly. "Well now, Calder, seems the lady sings for another audience tonight. You gonna play the hero or live to ride another day?" Jesse's gun thundered, dropping one outlaw, but Clara was still trapped in the other's grip. He turned to Ethan, thrusting the boy hard toward the cleft. "Take the gap. Go." "I'm not leaving," Ethan shouted, voice breaking. "Not without her." The wagon drew closer, rifles blazing, bullets carving the gulch into splinters. Mercer's voice rose over it all, oily and commanding. "Fall back east. That's an order." But Jesse knew the truth now. If the men obeyed, they'd never see another sunrise. He had one chance. Break Mercer's grip on the town here, in this canyon, or lose Gray Butte forever. Jesse met Ethan's wild gaze. "You want justice for your pa? Then trust me, don't waste your shot on revenge. Save it for the fight that matters." The boy's breath shook, but he nodded. Slowly, above, Clara's voice cut through the storm, hoarse but defiant. "Jesse!" He raised his revolver, heart hammering, and charged into the gulch's fire. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the Wild West. Bullets tore the gulch into thunder and flame as Jesse Calder broke from cover, sprinting toward the wagon. Every step felt borrowed, stolen from death's ledger. His revolver barked, sparks biting through the night. One outlaw spun and fell. Another dropped his rifle, screaming. Clara Wynn thrashed against the man dragging her, heels digging into the dirt. Her voice cracked through the chaos. "Jesse!" Jesse's last round punched clean, the outlaw jerking backward, grip loosening. Clara fell free, scrambling toward the rocks. Jesse lunged, dragging her behind a slab of stone just as the wagon's rifles opened fire. The impact rattled his bones, chips of rock stinging his cheek. Silas Drennan whooped like a madman, firing deliberate shots that found their mark. "Now that's a fight. Look at you, Calder, playing hero after all." His grin glowed savage in the lantern light. But Jesse wasn't listening. Clara pressed close, breath ragged, eyes wide with terror, and something else trust. "You came," she whispered. "Always," Jesse said, though he knew promises in the West were lighter than dust. Across the gulch, Deputy Hank Mercer stood tall on a boulder, waving his red sash high. "Push east! Drive them out!" His men staggered toward the funnel of rifles, obeying like sheep to the slaughter. Jesse's stomach knotted. He rose, voice bellowing against the gunfire. "West! Into the rocks! He's leading you wrong!" The townsman faltered, torn between two voices. Hank's snarl cut through. "Don't listen to him. Calder's an outlaw, a drifter. He'll get you all killed." For a heartbeat, Jesse feared the truth would be swallowed whole. Then Ethan Crane's voice rang out, high but steady. "My pa trusted Calder. Mercer's the traitor." The boy raised his rifle, eyes locked on the deputy. "I saw him signal the outlaws." Gasps rippled even in the chaos. A townsman lowered his gun, then another. Doubt spread like wildfire. Hank's face twisted, mask slipping. He swung his revolver toward Ethan. "Liar!" Jesse fired first. The shot cracked the night, Hank's pistol spinning from his hand. He staggered, clutching his bleeding wrist, eyes burning with venom. "You're finished, Mercer," Jesse growled, but Silas's laugh slithered through the smoke. "Finished? No, Calder, this is just beginning." He rose from cover, eyes bright with hunger. "The town's yours to claim if you've got the spine, or mine if you don't." The wagon's rifles thundered again, showering sparks. The outlaws were regrouping, anger boiling. Hank staggered backward, teeth bared. Silas cocked his revolver with a smile that promised betrayal yet to come. And Jesse realized the canyon wasn't just a battleground, it was a crucible. The fire here would decide Gray Butte's future. Sheriff, outlaw, or vulture, someone would rise from the ashes. The question was who? The canyon reeked of powder and sweat. Rifles barked from the wagon, sparks carving the night into jagged light. Jesse Calder shoved Clara Wynn deeper into cover, then spun, revolver steady, eyes never leaving Silas Drennan. Silas stood in the open, tall and calm, as if bullets feared him. His grin gleamed white in the smoke. "See, Calder? The town's ripe. All it takes is one man with the guts to hold it. Tobias Crane's dead, Mercer's bled, and these sheep need a wolf." "You're no wolf," Jesse shot back. "Just a buzzard circling blood." Silas's chuckle rolled smooth as whiskey. "Buzzards live longer than wolves." He snapped his gun up, firing clean into an outlaw on the ridge without even glancing. The man toppled like a puppet with its strings cut. "But I fight better than both." Nearby, Ethan Crane fired his rifle, the kick nearly knocking him backward. The boy's bullet clipped a lantern from the wagon, sending fire splashing across canvas. Outlaws cursed, scrambling as the blaze licked upward. "Good shot," Jesse barked, pulling the boy down before another volley could find him. "Stay low." Across the wash, Hank Mercer clutched his bleeding wrist, fury twisting his face. "You'll regret crossing me, Calder. When this is done, the law will brand you outlaw for good." "The law died with Sheriff Crane," Jesse answered coldly. The wagon's fire spread fast, flames crawling the boards. The horses screamed, rearing wild, their harnesses snapping. The wagon lurched sideways, rifles still spitting, but in chaos now. No aim, no order. Jesse seized the moment. "Push west," he roared, voice cutting through smoke. "Cut them off before they regroup." The townsmen hesitated, then obeyed. One by one, they broke from Mercer's command, moving with Jesse into the rocks. Betrayal's grip cracked, replaced by something steadier. Trust. Hank's snarl curdled into panic. "You fools, he's leading you to ruin." But his voice was swallowed by gunfire and the roar of flames. Clara grabbed Jesse's arm. "They'll follow you now, all of them. But if Silas stands, you'll never hold Gray Butte." Jesse knew she was right. Silas wasn't fighting for survival. He was testing the ground, laying claim with every bullet. If Jesse faltered, the town wouldn't belong to Mercer or the outlaws. It would belong to Silas. The burning wagon groaned, tilting, spilling rifles into the sand. The outlaws scattered, leader shouting orders Jesse couldn't hear. In the madness, Silas raised his revolver high, voice carrying clear as a bell. "Gray Butte belongs to the man who takes it tonight." His words echoed off the canyon walls, and Jesse felt the weight of 100 eyes, townsmen, outlaws, innocents turned to him. Clara's whisper brushed his ear, desperate and sure. "If you don't claim it, he will." Jesse's revolver gleamed in the firelight. His hand tightened. The gulch, the town, the night itself balanced on the edge of his trigger. And somewhere in the blaze, another figure moved unseen, till now raising a rifle not at Jesse, not at Silas, but at Ethan. The fire from the wagon painted the canyon walls in savage orange. Sparks lifted into the night like lost souls, and through that storm Jesse Calder saw it. The gleam of a rifle barrel, steady, aimed not at him, not at Silas Drennan, but at Ethan Crane. "Down!" Jesse roared, throwing himself across the boy. The rifle cracked, stone exploding where Ethan's head had been. Dust and fire swallowed the sound of the scream that should have followed. Ethan blinked up at Jesse, stunned. You saved me. Keep your head low," Jesse barked, hauling him into deeper cover. His heart hammered like a war drum, not from fear, but from the knowledge that someone wanted the boy silenced. Ethan had spoken too loudly in the saloon, named Mercer as traitor. Now someone meant to erase the voice that had turned the tide. Silas Drennan's laugh cut through the chaos, sharp as broken glass. "Looks like someone else sees the boy as a problem too. Can't say I blame 'em. Truth-tellers don't live long in towns like Gray Butte." Jesse's revolver snapped towards Silas, eyes blazing. "One more word and I'll finish this here." But Silas only tipped his hat, smile never fading. "Easy, Calder. I'm not the one with a bead on him." He pointed with his revolver barrel toward the ridge. "That shot came from someone you know." Jesse's gut twisted. The figure on the ridge ducked back into shadow, but not before the firelight licked across a face. Familiar. One of Gray Butte's own ranch hands, a man who'd drunk at the saloon, nodded at Tobias Crane on Sundays, and now raised a rifle against his son. Mercer. It all stank of Mercer's hand. Deputy Hank, clutching his bleeding wrist, shouted above the crackle of the burning wagon, "Don't let him fool you. Calder's twisting your minds. He's no savior, he's dragging you all into hell." But the townsmen hesitated now, doubt gnawing through Mercer's words. They'd seen him drive them toward the east funnel. They'd seen Jesse save Ethan, while Mercer hid in the smoke. Clara Wynn pressed close to Jesse, voice urgent. "The people will follow you, right here, right now. If you don't take the lead, Silas will, and the boy dies next time." The canyon spun with firelight, shadows, and choice. Jesse felt it pressing, in the weight of Gray Butte, the ghost of Tobias Crane's last breath. The eyes of Clara and Ethan locked on him. He couldn't run anymore. He rose, revolver raised high, voice carrying like thunder. "Gray Butte belongs to its people, not traitors. You want to live? You ride with me west through the gulch. We break their hold tonight." The townsmen roared back, a sound rough with fear but stronger than silence. Even in the firestorm, Jesse felt the tide shift. But Silas only laughed, stepping into the glow, eyes gleaming with hunger. "So you claim it, Calder. Sheriff or outlaw, you can't wear both skins. Which are you?" Before Jesse could answer, the ridge exploded with fresh gunfire. The outlaws surged, and among them, Jesse saw the glint of Mercer's red sash, not retreating, but charging with the enemy. The traitor had chosen his side. And Jesse knew the real fight for Gray Butte was only beginning. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the Wild West. The canyon howled with fresh gunfire as Hank Mercer broke from the shadows, red sash blazing in the firelight. No longer deputy, no longer law, he came with the outlaws now. Face twisted in fury, pistol spitting lead. "Take them all," he roared. "Gray Butte's mine." The sight tore through the townsmen like a blade. Some froze, disbelief chaining their hands. Others turned their barrels on the man they'd once called deputy. Bullets split the night, snapping into stone and flesh alike. Jesse Calder shoved Ethan Crane behind a shattered boulder. "Stay low." His revolver boomed, each shot clean, steady, purposeful. He wasn't aiming for chaos, he was carving a path. Clara Wynn crouched near him, her torn ribbon fluttering like a wounded flag. "They'll follow you now," she shouted over the roar. "But if you fall, Silas takes it all." Silas Drennan prowled just ahead, laughter curling from his lips like smoke. He fired without hurry, every bullet finding blood. Look at 'em, Calder. Like cattle with two brands, not knowing which herd they belong to. Best kill the red-sashed wolf before he breeds more confusion. Ethan lifted his rifle, hands trembling but fierce, his eyes locked on Mercer, who fired wildly into the townsman. "I can take him!" the boy cried. Jesse caught the barrel, dragging it down. "Not you. Not yet." "Why?" Ethan's voice cracked. "He betrayed my pa, betrayed all of us. Because if you miss, you die next. And if you hit," Jesse's jaw tightened, "you'll never outrun it. It's because if you hit." The boy's breath hitched, but he lowered the rifle. His gaze clung to Jesse like a lifeline. The fire-swallowed wagon lurched, a wheel snapping, spilling its armed riders into the dust. Flames roared higher, throwing Mercer into stark silhouette. He reloaded, snarling, his eyes on Jesse like a hawk fixing prey. "You don't belong here, Calder," he shouted. "This town don't need drifters wearing borrowed honor." "Better borrowed than sold," Jesse growled back. The townsman's courage flickered, caught between Jesse's steady fire and Mercer's venomous shouts. The canyon itself seemed to wait, holding its breath for the next hand to be dealt. Silas spun, firing 2 quick shots that dropped outlaws trying to flank. He tipped his hat at Jesse. "Well, partner, looks like we're both gunning for the same prize. Question is, do we fight side by side, or turn on each other when the smoke clears?" Jesse didn't answer. His revolver was already raised, sights locked on the red sash cutting through the firelight. And in that suspended heartbeat, Jesse knew, the moment had come to decide whether Hank Mercer lived another breath or whether Gray Butte would be stained with his fall. The next shot would write the town's future. The canyon's fire raged higher, painting Hank Mercer in red and gold. His sash burned like a banner of treachery, his revolver steady on Jesse Calder. The two men faced each other across the gulch, smoke curling between them, townsmen and outlaws frozen in the standoff's gravity. "You think you're savior, Calder?" Mercer spat, his voice jagged. "You're nothing but a drifter hiding behind a dead man's name. Gray Butte don't need you, it needs someone willing to take what's owed." Jesse's revolver never wavered. "Sheriff Crane trusted me with his last breath. You sold him to die in the dust. You're no lawman, Mercer. You're carrion." Ethan Crane's voice cracked through the smoke, raw and shaking. "He killed my pa." The boy raised his rifle again, hands trembling. Clara Wynn caught him, arms tight around his shoulders. "Not like this, Ethan," she whispered fiercely. "Don't let him drag you into his shadow." Mercer barked a laugh, bitter as iron. "Let the boy try, I'll gut him just like his father." The words snapped something in Jesse. His finger tightened. The revolver roared. Mercer staggered, the red sash blooming darker across his chest. His pistol slipped, clattering to stone. He dropped to his knees, fury twisting his face even as the light left his eyes. The canyon fell silent. Outlaws stared. Townsmen gasped. The man they'd feared, followed, cursed, was gone. Only smoke and betrayal remained. Silas Drennan stepped forward, slow clap echoing like thunder. His grin gleamed through the fire. "Well, well," Calder finally takes his crown. His eyes glittered with hunger. "But kings don't last long in places like this." "Stay your tongue, Silas," Jesse said, voice low. "This town's had its fill of vultures." Silas tilted his head, amused. "You call yourself sheriff now? Or just executioner?" Before Jesse could answer, the wagon collapsed in flames, its gunpowder stores igniting. The explosion ripped through the canyon, shaking the ground, hurling men and horses into chaos. Fire spiraled skyward, swallowing the night in a roar of ash. Jesse shielded Clara and Ethan with his body, the heat searing his skin. When the blast faded, only smoke remained, and the sound of outlaws fleeing into the dark, broken, scattered. The townsmen staggered to their feet, battered but alive. Eyes turned toward Jesse, heavy with something new, not fear, not suspicion, expectation. Clara touched his arm, her voice soft but sure. They'll follow you now, whether you want it or not. Jesse looked to Ethan, the boy clutching his father's rifle, tears streaking his dust-caked face. The boy nodded once, silent, but it was enough. And yet, in the shadows beyond the smoke, Silas's grin lingered. He hadn't fled. He hadn't lost. He was waiting, watching. The night wasn't over. The real reckoning lay ahead. Dawn crept over Gray Butte with a light that felt too clean for the blood it revealed. Smoke drifted in tired ribbons from the canyon, ashes settling like snow over shattered rock. Jesse Calder stood at the edge of Dry Creek, revolver heavy at his side. The townsmen gathered behind him, bruised, hollow-eyed, but alive. Sheriff Tobias Crane's son, Ethan, stood tallest among them, his father's rifle across his chest. The boy's face was pale, but his eyes were steel. Clara Wynn stepped from the shadows, her torn ribbon tied in her hair again, defiant against the night she'd endured. She looked at Jesse as though seeing him new, not the drifter who'd walked into her saloon, but the man who had carried Gray Butte through fire. "You held them together," she whispered. Jesse shook his head. "I just kept 'em from breaking." A slow clap echoed. Silas Drennan emerged from the smoke, untouched, his grin sharp as ever. "Fine speech, Calder, but law doesn't rise from ashes. Men like us, we decide who wears the badge." He tossed something into the dirt Mercer's red sash, charred and torn. "You want it, Sheriff? Then claim it, or I will." The air tightened, the canyon itself waiting. Jesse met Silas's eyes. Two men bound not by loyalty, but by inevitability. "Gray Butte doesn't need another vulture," Jesse said, voice steady. "It needs peace." Silas chuckled, low and hungry. "Peace don't last. Only men like me do." His hand twitched toward his holster. Jesse's revolver cleared leather in a breath. The shot cracked like thunder, echoing against the canyon walls. Silas staggered, surprise flashing across his grin before the dust took him. Silence fell. True silence. For the first time since the saloon doors opened. The townsmen exhaled as one. Ethan stepped forward, lifting his father's rifle high. "Gray Butte has a sheriff," he said, voice firm. "And it ain't Silas, it's Calder." Jesse felt the weight of 100 eyes, the crown of a badge he'd never wanted pressing against him. Clara's hand found his, warm despite the ash. He slid his revolver back into its holster and turned toward town. "Let's go home." The sun broke full over the horizon, painting the desert gold. Gray Butte would heal, scarred but breathing. Whether Jesse wore the badge tomorrow or left it behind, the town had seen its darkest night. For now, that was enough. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the Wild West.